All right, let's jump on in. So we're making our way through 7 big pairs of teaching on the tongue in Proverbs. And each of these we're looking at putting off and putting on. We're looking at combos of biblical teaching on these issues. In the last few weeks, we've talked about truth and lies. And those seem pretty easy to kind of identify and to think about how they might show up in everyday life. This week and next week are going to be a little tougher, in part because I think what we're seeing in these 2 weeks are much broader categories that really represent all kinds of different speech that we're going to hear about as we go through the rest of our teaching time. And so these 2 weeks are focused on foolish words and wise words. Foolish words and wise words. As we make progress through the class, we'll talk about destructive and constructive words, manipulative and sincere words, peace-breaking and peacemaking, and on down we go. And so we'll see some different kinds of words, maybe that are a little more concrete. But here are our topics for today: foolish words and wise words. Let's review quickly our memory verses from the past 2 weeks. And so I'll just use our magical letters, and we'll see if that's of help to us. Let me ask you this. Who feels prepared to recite Proverbs 12:19? Anybody feel strong? You feel good? Anybody remember the first word? Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Did it come back to you a little bit? Okay. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. What's a takeaway from that verse? So let me ask you this. How could that verse help you in your spiritual life as you go about your day? Okay. Motivation to be truthful. All right. Guys, there's plenty of seats up front, too, if you want to squeeze in. All right. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Provides us a measure of encouragement to remain truthful, even when the temptation comes to speak lies. Okay. What other applications could you see that having in your daily walk? Okay. Eternity is in view here, right? Good. So it's actually even pointing us to something like Revelation 28. All liars have their part in the lake of fire, right? That there is heaven and hell are in the balance, if you will, as we think about these things. Okay? All right, good. Let's see if anybody remembers this one. I'll give you a hint. The first word is A. Does that help? That didn't help. Truthful, a truthful what? Witness saves lives. But one who breathes out lies is deceitful. All right, truthful witness saves lives, but one who breathes out lies is deceitful. All right, good. So we're adding to our quiver here. We're adding to our biblical tongue verses so that we can be encouraged by these as we make our way through. Let me give you a quote from the commentator Charles Bridges on the tongue. As we think about foolish words and wise words, Bridges says, the tongue shows the man. The wise commands his tongue. The fool, his tongue commands him. Think about that quote a little bit. That one of the things that the distinction between wise and foolish that we see in Proverbs is that the wise man's tongue is a tool in his hand to do good, right? It's useful for him. It's used by him. It is something that he makes choices about and uses it judiciously. Rather, the fool is taken by his tongue. The fool is subject to his tongue. And so we could be thinking about that as we think about these big categories of wise speech and foolish speech. No. All right. So let's look at our verse for today. Proverbs 19, verse 20. Proverbs 19, verse 20. Let's read it together. We'll work on memorizing it. As you're coming in, if you didn't get a chance to, make sure to grab the note sheet there in the back. All right. So 19:20. Here we go. Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future. All right, one more time with me. Here we go. Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future. All right, so let's just think about it as we're reading it here. This is a call to heed instruction, to accept instruction, so you can gain wisdom. Okay, one of the things that we'll talk about as we move through these 2 weeks is that the fool is happy to speak out of, to use a fancy word, the paucity of his knowledge, right? The fool will speak having nothing in the tank when it comes to knowledge. But the wise speak out of the knowledge that they have. They have much knowledge, and so they speak to an issue. They speak to help. All right, let's go again with me. Here we go. Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future. All right, let's start killing some words. Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future. Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future. Here's back. Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future. Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future. All right, very good. So be adding that one in, and we'll review it again next week. And just be thinking about that, right? Think about that. It's a blessing to have so many of our youth joining us here. Young men and young women, think about this verse. Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future. Your life is being built up day by day by the words that you hear. Right? And of course, that goes the other way too. It could be being torn down. We'll have other verses that'll talk about that. But be listening. Get wisdom, as the proverb would say. Whatever you get wisdom, right? And so be taking in the instruction. Take it in school. Take it in as mom and dad are teaching you and sharing with you. And take it in as you're hearing the word proclaimed at church and elsewhere. Listen to advice and accept instruction. You want wisdom. And so go get it. All right? Let's look over at some additional verses as we try to build out our categories around wise and foolish. So let's go to Proverbs 14. We'll find a couple things there. So our topic for these 2 weeks is wise speech, foolish speech. And what we're trying to do in this first biblical survey section is we're trying to look at Proverbs, and we're trying to just take kind of a key nugget away from each of these Proverbs, okay? And then what we'll do in a minute is we'll try to kind of collapse all that down into a definition. So Proverbs 14, verse 3 says, "By the mouth of a fool comes a rod for his back, but the lips of the wise will preserve them. By the mouth of a fool comes a rod for his back, but the lips of the wise will preserve them." So what would we say is true about foolish words in light of what we've read there? It's painful, okay? It causes pain. There's trouble that jumps out because of that. Good. How about verse 7? "Leave the presence of a fool." So it's 14 verse 7. "Leave the presence of a fool, for there you do not meet words of knowledge." And I keep going. "The wisdom of the prudent is to discern his way, but the folly of fools is deceiving." What can we take away from that verse? Don't hang out with fools. Your company matters, okay? Yeah, it's maybe not quite as strong as, flee the forbidden woman, Proverbs 5 and 6 and 7, but get out. Get away from this. You're not going to meet words of knowledge. It essentially makes you think about the infection rate, if you will, of foolishness. That the more foolishness you hear, the more likely you are to become infected by it, to become foolish yourself. And then down in verse 8 is that it's deceiving. It, in and of itself, is deceptive. It makes you think things that are untrue or cause you to question what you know to be true. There are plenty of seats right up here. So we need to keep kind of building our understanding here. Let's go to 10:14, Proverbs 10:14. Somebody read that for us loud and proud.
The wise lay up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool brings ruin near.
Very good. The wise lay up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool brings ruin near. What can we take away from that?
Knowledge is of God, so that's what we should be laying up.
Okay.
The foolishness of the world.
Okay. So it is kind of a pursuit of ours. It should be to take hold of knowledge as God would have us to do. But foolishness is a pursuit of the world. There's a lot of worldliness involved there. Okay. What does it mean that it brings ruin near? Okay. All right. So you have entered ruin land, right? When you're speaking foolishly, you're in that zone. You're kind of in the kill zone of ruin when you're speaking foolishly. All right. Good. Over to Proverbs 15. Let's look at a couple passages there. And this is when you say, I wish I had responded quicker when you asked the question to the whole group. All right, work as pairs and come away with a couple takeaways from these two verses, 15:2 and 15:7. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I want some takeaways, things that we can add into our definition that we're going to build here in just a second. So, ready, set, go. All right, what'd you come back with? What'd you come back with? 15:2. The heart matters. Okay, good. Okay, wise men can see what is good and right, knowledge, and they approve of it. Good. What else? Okay, wise pay attention and fools don't care. Good.
Kind of the imagery of like not just a drip, right?
Yeah.
Foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
Coming out, it's like poured out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not just dripping out, it's gushing out, right? It's flowing out. Think about, Genesis 1, God is creating everything. He says, let the waters teem with fish, right? It's not just, there are some fish in the ocean, right? The ocean teems with fish. It's full of it. It's overflowing, right? And that's kind of what's in view here. It's just dumping out folly, right? Everywhere, you look, it's going to find a way to come out. Let's move here.
Yeah, it was something said about the wise, humility, being quick to listen, but pridefulness and quick to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, so quick to listen versus quick to speech. So it's interesting that wise words are slower coming, right? They're spoken when needed and spoken when helpful, but they're slower in coming. Versus the fool is ready to fire off at any moment. He's just ready to go. I got something. I can say something. Okay, it's good.
We're out foolishness. It's just like when the tornado comes through. The day after, you can always tell where the tornado was at.
Okay.
The destruction behind it.
Good. A wake of destruction behind the mouth of a fool, like a path of a tornado. Good. Anything else?
In all these verses, there appears to be a contrast in each one. The first one, soft heart. Second one, wise fool.
Mm-hmm.
Evil good. Gentle perverse.
Good. So Nick is pointing out that one of the almost universal, it's not universal, but one of the almost universal structures of Hebrew Proverbs is parallelism, right? This parallel, this contrast. It's interesting, New Testament wise, I see it a lot in 1 John. If you read 1 John, you see light and darkness, evil and good, and life and death. And here you see it a lot in, especially in the tongue verses, because he's just showing that there are two ways to live. It goes all the way back to Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. There's two paths. There's two ways to live. Some commentators even talk about Psalm 1 being the commentary on the rest of the Psalms. Everything comes down to this. Will you walk in the path of blessedness, or you walk in the path of wickedness? And there's no in between. There's no gray. And I think Proverbs is trying to show us the same too. It's either good, right, and helpful, or it's foolish, wicked, and hurtful. And we should be mindful of that. All right, another one or two before we move on.
Well, it goes back to from the heart.
Mm-hmm.
It comes out your mouth.
Yep.
So in this case, if your heart is pure and you've accumulated wisdom, you can share that at an appropriate time and in an appropriate way.
Good.
If you're foolish, everything comes out of your mouth is going to be a deception.
Yeah. Yeah, good. So it goes back to the heart, just to try to reiterate, it goes back to the heart. If your heart is full of wisdom, it's going to come out. But if your heart is absent of wisdom, what you're going to speak is just going to be foolishness and uselessness, really. Okay, good. All right, pressing on. We got one more pair here. Proverbs 26, 9 and 16. We can go there together. All right, this one gave me a little pause here, and maybe you can help me interpret it rightly. Proverbs 26, verse 9, like a thorn that goes up into the hand of a drunkard is a proverb in the mouth of fools. Wow. What do you make of that? Go ahead. Okay. All right. So there's something to be said for a fool who is trying to speak as though they're wise, and they come off very hypocritical, or whether they realize it or not. Good. Yeah. Okay, they're numb to it. Interesting. Yeah.
What you put in, what you're going to put out. I mean, if you're a drunkard, you're putting in the world and selfishness, same as a fool. I mean, you're not putting in knowledge and wisdom of God, so you're trying to speak out a proverb. It's coming out as fools.
Yes, Jason's kind of getting that you're going to reach for something, maybe even to speak, maybe even to try to help, and what you're going to come up with is going to be your foolishness in that place, right? This is just feels like an easy reach over here. One of the things that I really appreciated about ACDC doing the biblical counseling stuff is we had kind of this little mini campaign to say every Christian is a counselor, right? Well, what were we saying by that? We're saying that you're always giving counsel. You're giving advice. You're speaking to people in light of life's troubles and difficulties and trying to help them. And so if I call, a dear brother in the church and ask him for wisdom about a situation, and if I call my, unbelieving friends from college and ask them about wisdom from a situation, if I call my parents and ask for wisdom about a situation, I'm going to get counsel. I'm going to get something. But the question is, what kind of something am I getting? What is that counsel that I'm receiving? That same commentator, Bridges, says, "It is no more fit for a fool to meddle with a wise speech than for a drunken man to handle a thorn bush." That thorn drives itself into his hand because he's too desensitized to realize what's going on, and he's only making it worse. And so again, it's just a caution about the danger of foolishness. Sometimes we think about a fool. I was thinking through my very astute, I was going to really rock you guys with some profound teaching by showing you another clip of Seinfeld. But I was thinking, who's the fool in Seinfeld? People who watch it, thank you. That was very nice. Thank you. Appreciated that. That's fine. All right.
I love you, man.
I get it, man. Move on. Talk more about the Bible. Less about Seinfeld.
Is it maybe not also the idea of like, if you're intoxicated, right, and you've got that thorn in your hand, you almost are not able to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have it there, it's bothering you. It's very uncomfortable even, but it's like you have no idea how to actually like motor skills get it out type of thing. I wonder if that part of the idea of this person.
Yeah, good. So it's stuck there. It's irritating. So it's irritating in his mouth, right? We talked about that the bread turned into gravel when the liar had achieved bread, and so maybe in this way, his attempt at speaking Proverbs, even that is driving him nuts. He can't get past it. All right, verse 16. Now this one's interesting because it doesn't actually have speech in the top half. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. He could listen to all 7 of those men and not change one iota. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to say that foolish speech doesn't listen to reason and wisdom, right? Because that's kind of weird. Speech can't listen. It's saying things. But the fool certainly is unwilling to hear wisdom. He professes great confidence over his capabilities, and yet here he's got 7 men, if you will, speaking to him and correcting him, and he wants nothing to do with it. You see again the impact of the heart on this study of the tongue is that the fool, the sluggard in this case, which is just a flavor of fool, the fool has said in his heart that I won't be corrected. I don't see the need to hear from anyone else. I don't see the need to know of anything else other than my opinion. Let's look at Proverbs 30. All the way down to 32. If you have been foolish, exalting yourself, or if you have been devising evil, put your hand on your mouth. For pressing milk produces curds, pressing the nose produces blood, and pressing anger produces strife. What will foolishness produce? Well, it will produce strife, but what is another way that foolishness kind of acts out in the world, in its speech? Yeah, it provokes conflict between people. Mm-hmm. And in this case, there at the back end of the first line of 32, by exalting yourself, right? The fool is making much of himself. The fool is finding reason to kind of gather everybody around so they can hear how great he is. All right, let's add in a couple passages and not a ton, so we can build our definition here in just a minute. Let me give you a couple references, and if you want to pin just the references down, then I'll walk through them for the sake of time. Isaiah 32, verse 6. If anybody knows how to type in PowerPoint while you're writing, while you're presenting, I would be happy to know that, because I cannot figure out how to do that. Okay, that's what I thought. That's no fun. Because I want to, put these in here, but that's just, you don't want that, right? Like, that's not helpful. Okay, Isaiah 32, 6. Okay, all right. I will not be exalting myself with my PowerPoint writing capabilities here. All right. There we go. Much better. Isaiah 32, 6. Ecclesiastes 10, 13. Ecclesiastes 10, 13. Luke 16, 15. Ecclesiastes 10, 13. Luke 16, 15. Psalm 53, verse 1. Psalm 53, verse 1. Job 2, verse 10. Job 2, verse 10. What's helpful about some of these is these are places where the Bible is describing specific kinds of speech as foolish speech. And so again, as I said at the beginning, this is a hard category in the sense that it's so broad, right? It could be, really we could say everything we're going to talk about for the rest of our study kind of can relate to wise or foolish speech. But these are passages where Scripture refers to certain things as foolish speech. Isaiah 32, verse 6 says, "For the fool speaks folly, and his heart is busy with iniquity, to practice ungodliness, to utter error concerning the Lord, to leave the craving of the hungry unsatisfied, and to deprive the thirsty of drink." So the foolishness coming out of the fool in Isaiah 32 is really a broad foolishness. It is both silliness, if you will, and abject wickedness. It's errors about God. It's leaving people unfed, so there's a whole range of things. Ecclesiastes 10:13, "The beginning of the words of his mouth is foolishness, and the end of his talk is evil madness." Job 2:10, as Job is speaking to his wife, he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. And then this is what I think we should take as really a critical distinction between wise speech and foolish speech. Psalm 53, verse 1 is also Psalm 14, verse 1. "The fool says in his heart, there is no God." Ken and I were talking a little bit about this, in prep, and he said, "Well, Logan, that's not speech. He's saying it in his heart." And I said, "Well, that's real good. I'm going to think about that a little bit." The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Where is that happening? It's all happening within his heart. But what is it issuing in? What comes out of the heart that consistently tells itself there is no God? Foolish speech, right? So let's see if we can build a definition in light of what we've heard. Let me try to put some principles out here, and you see what else jumps off the page to you. Going from, again, Psalm 14 or Psalm 53, verse 1, I'm going to say that foolish speech flows from a heart in either intentional or at least practical rebellion against God. intentional or practical rebellion against God. Whether you're living as an out and out, I'm just a flat out atheist, or I believe in some other God, or whatever the case is, or you're just living practically in the moment like there is no God. That's the heart that's in view when this kind of speech is happening. Foolish speech leads to difficulty for both the speaker and the hearer. Okay? Nobody's better off because they've said or heard foolish things. Foolish speech is loud and proud. It demands to be heard. Gather around, hear me, and I'm going to be a fool for you. We talked a little bit about it pours out, right? It just gushes out. It doesn't just show up here and there. It makes itself known. Hey, everybody, I'm a fool. Listen up. It's self-flaunting. The fool speaks out of what he lacks rather than what he has. Right? He's not speaking out of his treasure trove of wisdom because he got wisdom and he got instruction. No, he's speaking out of this lack. And even in the face of correction, it won't turn. He's wise in his own eyes. Anything you want to add to our definition there? The fool speaks out of what he lacks rather than what he has.
Could that also be contentment or lack of contentment? Maybe not what he lacks. He always speaks of what he doesn't have instead of appreciating what he does.
Yeah, okay, so Chuck's saying he's speaking about what he lacks rather than what he has. I mean, I think that could be there as well. What I had in mind was people who go off half-cocked about events, the things that they hear. You get this one little skinny bit of information around the water cooler, and then you go off telling everybody how the boss is about to quit. And it's like, I don't know, did you really have enough to make that report, right? That's not helpful when you're working off this little teeny tiny bit of information or nothing, right? You're just speculating. That's more foolish. From a heart in either intentional or practical rebellion against God. I'm just trying to say Psalm 14. That's all I'm going to say there. That when that verse says the fool has said in his heart there is no God, that's got to mean something to what we're thinking about when we think about foolish speech. All right, so let's ask, and here again, I accept this is a broad category, but what might this look like in an everyday example in your life or the lives of those around you? What might foolish speech look like for you?
Responding before I've heard the whole of it.
Okay. If one gives an answer before he hears the whole of a matter, it is his folly and shame, as Proverbs 18:13. So for you to speak without knowing something well is inherently foolish speech. Good. What else? Responding in pride. Yeah. Good. Also, how dare you say that to me? Responding in anger is foolish in and of itself. Good.
When we were reading the verse a few minutes ago, it talks about the fool is wiser than his own eyes, the seven of understanding. He doesn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, how many times have I heard good counsel?
Yeah.
And not even,
Yeah.
I know more than that.
Yeah. So we hear counsel and we just walk away unchanged, right? Yeah. Yeah. Good. Dave. Good. So they're ever learning, never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. So there's a foolish pursuit. There is a foolish pursuit of wisdom, or of knowledge, that is unconcerned with the end, right? It just, I'm just going to keep learning. I'm just going to keep taking in these things. Paul elsewhere talks about, foolish controversies and myths. Yeah, you can study all that. Is that going to help you in your Christian life? I don't think so. Okay. Filling your mind with the wrong things. Not God's word. That would be a way to fuel your foolishness, right? Which It's hard to say if you say it a couple times. Yeah, for sure. We can talk about boasting, right? There's foolishness in boasting. 2 Corinthians, Paul even talks about that he's going to boast. I sound like a madman, he says, right? Because he's trying to speak to their foolishness and correct them.
I would probably be speaking out of assumption.
Speaking out of assumption. Good. Very tempting, right? I want to have something to say. It's humbling to say, I don't know about that enough to really speak well to it. Let me think about that some more. That's humbling to say, to have to kind of admit you're not as wise as you wish you could be. Rejecting correction, continuous speech with no listening and no understanding. I thought about this too, and this is maybe, we'll find some other places this fits in a little better, but simply put, the fool doesn't consider the listener or the setting. Right? Like this, it's just not the setting for that. You know? So, I mean, I love Chuck's green shirt, but it's like, is this the moment? Be like, Chuck, where'd you get that shirt? It just looks great on me, man. I just want to talk about that a little bit. I have a shirt like that, but I don't know, it just never wears the right way. I don't really love, like, is this the moment for that? Say no, it's okay. Now this isn't that time, you know? I mean, Jason's a nurse. Like, this isn't that wart that I need to talk about. Like, this is not the moment for that, right? But a fool will just fire off. It doesn't matter the setting. It doesn't matter the listener. They're not aware or they don't care about speaking in a way that fits the occasion. And so their speech becomes hurtful. And I think under all that, there's some amount of, I don't really care about who God is or what he wants for me. I don't really care about other people or what they think is good and right and helpful. I want to say it, so I'm going to say it. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. Okay, but this isn't the moment for it, right? Or you might think it's true, but you have a lot of reason to be convinced otherwise. So let's move from there and talk about what heart motivations or false beliefs might undergird this kind of speech. So think about some of the examples we just gave and then ask, what is the heart behind that kind of speech? No fear of the Lord. Okay, good. Egocentric. What's a Bible way to say that? Pride, right? Could be fear of man related. Yeah.
Without discernment, if you keep listening to foolishness, your mind is naturally going to foolish.
Okay, so you lack discernment, in Romans 12:1, and in so lacking, you keep bending that way, further and further. Good. Yep.
They like to hear themselves.
Like to hear themselves talk. Yep. It's attention getting, right? I'm the first to speak to it, so everybody's looking at me and listening to me and wondering what I'm thinking about the issue. I have something to say. I was thinking about my undergrad was in mass comm and did some journalism study, and I was thinking about if it bleeds, it leads, right? I've got the juice, I've got the drama, I've got all the things that we want to talk about, and I can jump in and start firing off and get people thinking about what I'm thinking about.
Self-centeredness.
Self-centeredness, yeah, for sure. Bridges says, wise men lay up knowledge for their own use. Fools lay it out. For want of sound wisdom, they only open their mouths for their own mischief. In profane rebellion, groveling selfishness, ungodly worldliness, or hateful pride. They are speaking these ways, again, out of a lack of what they don't have. What other heart motivation might motivate that? One way to ask is this, what are you wanting when you speak in this way? Approval. Yeah. It hasn't kind of entered the chat here yet, but where is one really, 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 really common place that this kind of speech takes place? Okay. The news channels we don't like. Okay, got it. What else? Where else? The interwebs, right? So what might you want when you put your new hot take on the internet? Likes, views, comments, smash that subscribe button, right? You want attention, you want connection, you want to be known in your little, area of the world, okay? Which is all just what? Self-aggrandizement. I want to be made much of, okay? What promises does this sin make? Remember, one of the things we're trying to do as we think about these things, we're trying to get tactically behind the sin. We're trying to understand its tactics and understand it well so that we can fight it well. Well, one of the things sin does is it makes promises. So what kind of promises does the sin of foolish speech make?
You are the most important. What you say.
Good. You are the most important, and what you're saying or thinking is the most important. Very good.
You are favored by man.
Okay, you're favored by man. Yeah.
Let's start fools. You got there.
Yeah. You can think better about yourself if you get there first. Good.
There almost seems to be like an absent-minded nature of the fool in so many of the proverbs where they speak out of the evil of their heart, but oftentimes not even realize it.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's not necessarily a promise of sin, but it's like an effect of the condition of being foolish.
Yeah. So Jake's kind of driving at the fool might not even have a promise in mind, if you will. He just shoots. That's what he's got. And what comes out is foolishness. So as I kind of collated a bunch of these together, I started to notice something. So I preached Proverbs 5, 6, and 7 a couple weeks ago. There is a lot of promise in sexual sin. And what I mean by that is the forbidden woman promises great things, right? Her lips drip honey. Her speech is smoother than oil. She is promising pleasure and joy and sweetness and come away with me and everything's going to be awesome. I didn't find a comparable verse like that about foolishness, particularly about foolish speech. There isn't. I think everything we've said so far is good and right. I don't see in Proverbs, and you can, enhance my understanding here and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see promise of foolishness where the writer gives kind of over, like he does in the story of the forbidden woman, to say, yes, this is what you're thinking. You're thinking this is going to be good, and that's going to be good when you speak in this way. I'm kind of leaning towards what Jake is saying, which is there's almost no promise to be grabbed onto because there's nothing good that could even feel good coming out of this. And so when the scripture talks about it, it's almost saying the fool just speaks. He's not pondering some promise. He's not really, working his way down to the bottom and he ends up tempted into sin. That's just what comes out of him. It pours forth, right? It just comes out of him every time he talks. And so I thought that was interesting, that it made it different than even lies last week. We said very plainly that lies are motivated, right? That's part of what makes it a lie. The buyer who says bad, bad, and then goes away and cheers because he got a good deal, he knew exactly what he was doing. The fool, frankly, is too dumb to even know what he's doing. He's just talking. He's just throwing it out there.
Well, you see a lot of situations, I believe, where fools parrot the liar.
Yeah.
Like society, there's people in society that are intentionally putting lies into our society.
Yeah.
And then you have the fool who runs with it and parrots it and repeats it. And he doesn't have the same motivation. He's just repeating what he's heard and may believe that it's true. Mm-hmm. And the liar at the top is the one that is actually has the motive to deceive. And
That's
the
good.
fool is just unintentionally helping him along.
It's good. So the fool will hear a lie or a false report and spread it, right? And we might not attribute the same malice to the fool that we did to the original liar. But it's still hurtful. It's still harmful. They're still not making things better by spreading that falsity around. Good. Yeah. Yeah, good. All right, let's press on here. What damage can this kind of sinful speech have on your relationships? Remember we talked about the liar. We said, you'd be untrustworthy. People would, maybe at work, you'd get in trouble. What kind of damage can this have on your relationships?
You'll lose respect. People don't heed your advice.
Okay, so those who are keyed into your foolishness won't heed your advice. They certainly won't go to you for advice. If they're wise, they'll be looking somewhere else. Okay. Okay. Your character will be questioned in other ways, right? So if you are, friends with someone who is a fool, you would probably not lend them your car keys if they needed the car for the weekend, right? You'd be more concerned because you've seen them speak in this way and be foolish in this way. Okay. Okay, insecurity. Tell me more.
Just doubtfulness, being around the person, not sure how they're going to respond, what they're going to say.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're engaged with somebody who is kind of a loose cannon. You don't know what they're going to say. You don't know what they're going to do. So what does that end up doing socially? Does that become like your close, tight friend? Or is that somebody you end up kind of having to, back away from, or safer scenarios, whatever else?
We have an example in the news,
Mm-hmm.
and all the people who lost their careers, people wanted to talk to them.
Sure.
They destroyed their life.
Yep. Yeah. So association with wicked people in that way, I mean, not even foolish, but, abjectly wicked people causes major damage. Good.
Well, the verse about like gathering up ruin, I wonder if some of that is foolish people tend to attract other foolish people, which means if they have a problem and need input, they're probably going to get foolish advice.
Yeah.
And then their life ends up full of ruin.
Yeah, good. Vicious cycle, right? You make a little circle. Yeah, it doesn't seem like you're getting out of that, right? If you're a fool and you're picking foolish friends, you can expect the worst, to keep coming. Yeah. Yeah.
Self-centeredness, selfishness, and pride that goes with it will be hurtful to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Good. So they're hearing you say all these things. They're hearing and watching as you speak in these ways, and that's going to hurt them. Yeah, good. All right, how about your work? How would this kind of foolish speech, so let's take my little water cooler example earlier. You are prone to hearing a little sliver of a conversation and kind of going around speaking like you know the whole of a matter. How could that affect your work life?
Work is like a relationship built off a foundation and stepping stones.
Okay.
If I can't trust you with the little things, how can I trust you with the big things? So.
Okay. So Jason's saying there's a relationship happening there at work. It's built on trust, and little things lead to big things. Good. Yeah.
In corporate, HR understands foolish talk.
Okay.
Pretty sure there's maybe like 2 or 3 times that they give you grace.
Okay. So you might find yourself out on the street because your foolishness is causing such a ruckus in the workplace. Good. Back to the, wiser in your own eyes than 7 others. I mean, you might have been corrected. You might have been reprimanded. You might have been told, hey, this is how we do this as a company. And you say, well, I don't care. I'm going to do it the way I want. Right? You speak kind of out of that hard-heartedness, that I won't hear-ness. And, there again, I think a lot of this ends up with you're out on your keister. Is that a word? You can say that? You're out on your behind because you are persisting in this foolishness, part of which is you won't be corrected, right? You won't even consider correction. But I think you could have a lot more damage than that, right? Because we've talked about, gossip and stuff later, but if you are out there foolishly spreading bad reports, you're kind of poisoning the well around you with people around you. So maybe you heard, that your boss was going away for a week, and you took that to mean that he was going to apply somewhere else, and your boss was going to leave the company, and you're out here just throwing that out to everybody that'll hear it. Oh, I know Steve's leaving. He's going over to such and such. and we're all, toast. I don't know what we're going to do. Well, then, John and Bill and Jim all go find other jobs because they're worried that Steve's leaving. Well, who caused that? You, right? You're poisoning that whole ecosystem, if you will, by speaking that way. All right, let's move on. And let's talk about tactically, practically, where are you most tempted to give in to this kind of speech? Why don't you talk to your neighbor for 2 minutes? Where are you most tempted to give into this kind of speech? So what would you say is kind of the avenue wherein you might be tempted to speak foolishly? 2 minutes, go.
Ring a bell that we didn't.
I was going to say, we have a dog whistle or something. Top 2. Okay, good. So where are you most tempted to give into this kind of speech? Who wants to jump up? Let us know. With children. Okay. With your children? Okay. Foolish speech with your children. Good. What else?
With my siblings.
With your siblings. Those are children too. Good. All right. What else?
At work, sometimes you go a place you want to impress, and then you can go.
Okay, so you might pull out that boasting side when you're at work and new and you want to impress folks. Good.
Tired or trying to get my needs met here in this world rather than just in Christ.
Okay. All right. So we're using foolish speech to get something we want, we think we need, we got to have it. Good. When you're angry. Yeah, a lot of foolish speech coming out of an angry person.
Unanticipated conflict.
Okay, I didn't see that coming, and now I'm kind of on the back heel, and I'm just firing off. I got to say something. Okay.
You're a man too, and someone's like, hey, this is great. You're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, so you're kind of pinned. Either I go along with this, or I'm going to find myself, in conflict or whatever.
I think they're talking about sin.
Yeah.
Like you're putting on theirs, maybe.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
And things don't go the way you want it.
Okay, when things don't go the way you want. Yeah. Yeah, so foolish speech seems to be, in part, a way to try to tamp down things that we're concerned about. But, of course, it isn't going to make them better, right? I mean, that's part of what we have to admit from there. Yeah.
When you boast, if you're not giving credit to the Lord, so you can say, look how good I've done versus what the Lord has done for me.
Good. Good. So you're foolish when you boast about what God has given you as though you got it for yourself. Mm-hmm. Good. Good. All right. So if we're aware of some of those areas of speech, and we need to ask, how can we put them off, right? How can we put off this particular temptation? Well, in some sense, we need to consider the sources of foolishness. So we talked about having foolish friends, but I'm, willing to bet basically all of us carry around a foolish friend that will tell us whatever we want to hear and say it in the way we want to say it. So we just need to be mindful. What are those sources of temptation? What are those sources of foolishness that we're allowing in our lives? Are we spending a lot of time, listening to people who model this for us? So maybe you found yourself kind of tempted to barge into every conversation and feel like you have to have the last word. Well, what do you listen to throughout the day? Do you listen to people who are that way, who are bombastic in the way they speak and they have to be right about everything? Or you listen to people who are more metered and reasonable in their consideration? So consider cutting off sources of foolishness. Refuse to accept being quick to speak. Refuse to accept being quick to speak. I will take God's word that for me to be slow to speak is better than to be quick to speak. And so even though I'd rather feel like I have an answer for everything, I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to ask somebody to give me a minute to think about that. I'm going to, pray for God's help to be self-controlled in that way and put off being quick to speak. And then this I thought was kind of interesting. Put inhibitors in place to keep you from speaking quickly. What kind of inhibitors could you put in place to keep you from speaking quickly? Hang up the phone and call them back. All right. Okay, remove yourself from the situation. Hey, I don't think the next thing I say is going to be helpful. Can we talk about this in a little bit? Right?
Actually finish listening to what's being said to you.
Yeah. Ask questions before you try to give answers, right? Sleep on it. Yeah, don't respond when angry. Good. Maybe be mindful of the timing of your communication. You know, you've been had a full day of work, you had a late night, you were out doing, church stuff, obviously, and you got home late, and, that's not the time to respond to that fussy email from a client or that, text from a sibling or a relative that is a little contentious. Give yourself some time to think about it and respond well in a good timing. Okay. And pray for guidance. That's right. Ask God for his help. God does desire us to speak well and wisely. So let's ask for his help. Bridges again says, "Oh, for a large infusion of sound knowledge in the treasure house within, that the tongue may be at once disciplined and consecrated." So get wisdom, right? Get wisdom. Be learning about these things. I don't know enough about that to speak to it helpfully. Let me go learn about that some more, and then I'll see what I come up with.
What about the passage in James that we got recently? If anyone lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives to all generously without reproach. There's this idea. It's so interesting. James would mention the idea of God giving without reproach.
Yeah.
He's not criticizing his children for asking for wisdom or guidance.
That's right.
He wants us to very quickly come and lavish that.
Yeah. And I mean, here again, that's humility, right? To come to God and say, God, I don't know how to deal with this well, or I don't know what to say next. Please help me. Help me think through your word and understand what it would be to help this person in this situation. That's right. Versus, well, this is what I got, and just off you go. All right, last one here so I can get us out kind of sort of on time. How does God call you to address this kind of speech when you hear it? And we read that verse early on, 14, verse 7. "Leave the presence of a fool, for there you do not meet words of knowledge." How does God call you to hear it? God calls you to not hear it. I mean, that's kind of it. God calls you to not hear it. Don't fill your ears, don't fill your mind with the teaching of fools. Okay? That doesn't mean we, hang up on everybody, right? But be wise about how you're listening. Be wise about who you're hearing these things from. All right. Let's read a verse one more time, and then I'll give you next week's. You got it memorized already, right? "Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future." All right, let's try it one more time. "Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future." All right, very good. So be adding that one in. Again, we want to be wise by filling ourselves with God's truth. And then this is the verse we'll use next week, Proverbs 17, verse 4. I'll just read. "An evildoer listens to wicked lips, and a liar gives ear to a mischievous tongue." Okay, so we need to be mindful of that. Let me pray. Our Father, we do thank you for the day, and thank you for your word, how clearly it instructs us. We pray we would be wise in our listening and in our speech. Please help us to do that. We do ask it in Christ's name. Amen.